Welcome to Scale Without Chaos, the podcast on business growth, visionary leadership, and scalable systems. Each week, you'll hear real stories, the messy parts, and the proven strategies that help leaders grow without burning out their team or themselves. And yes, you'll definitely hear a few spicy takes along the way. Here are some highlights from this week's episode.
I love going fast. It's just like in my nature. And if I'm not going fast, I get really frustrated and I can't do it. However, going fast and killing your team are two different things.
Just giving yourself the time and the space to work through all of that when really, if you're just kind of pushed through your entire career, right? There was always something else to grow and to go to.
Yes.
And by the time you got there, you're like, oh, wait a minute. Is this really it? And now, this week's episode. Welcome back to Scale Without Chaos. I am your host, Samantha Reel, and today I am joined by Branca Ballot. And I always say I'm excited for the conversations, but I really, truly am. Branca is a former head of marketing for companies like Glide, GoDaddy, Zenefits. She brings all kinds of experience in building some high impact growth engines from those companies. But my favorite thing about Branca, what she says is two things, actually. So we're going to be talking about things like 0 to infinity in terms of building those growth engines and what that means. But then also maybe an interesting part that some of us have found ourselves in, the messy middle, and redefining what comes next in our careers after we find ourselves in a period of transition. So Branca, with that introduction, would you mind giving us a little bit more background about who you are, what you do, and then we can dive into it from there.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm very glad to be here. I am a Brazilian, actually mechanical engineer by background, and never worked as an engineer. I went straight into consulting and private equity. And about 10 years ago, I got into tech. I lived in San Francisco, got into tech. My first job was at Zenefits. And I started at Zenefits in sales strategy and operations. And I loved that job. It was about scaling the sales team from 200 to 600 people, all of the systems, how do we think about efficiency for that? And it was really, really, really fun. But halfway through my tenure at Zenefits, I moved to marketing to run growth marketing. And it was my first real job in marketing. And it was very interesting because I was coming from I don't know about marketing, but I know about systems and I know about numbers. And I know it was kind of figuring out as I went. And it was like a trial by fire, working really fast at a startup. And then have since stayed in marketing teams. And then I moved on to GoDaddy, then most recently at Glide for about 3 years. And then 4 months ago, I left my job. There was a lot happening in the market, a lot happening in my personal life. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to leave and figure out what it is. And it was the first time in my life that I kind of left the job without having another job. And so I recently actually wrote a post about being in the messy middle and how people don't usually talk about that. And so that's where I am today.
Yes. And that was the post that led me to you in the first place. I found that apparently the LinkedIn algorithm gods knew that I needed to read that post that day, along with apparently 600 of my closest friends or more. That post at the time had 600 comments or something. It was insane. It was so apparently with a lot of my closest friends needed to see that post that day. And it resonated with me because I, of course, have done the exact same thing. You get into that point where you're like, you know what? This isn't serving me. This place isn't serving me. This role that I'm playing right now isn't serving me right now. And it's time for me to take a break. And so that's what made me reach out and say, hey, would you mind sharing your story on the podcast? Because I think it would be a great one that a lot of folks need to hear too. And so that's how we got here.
Yeah. Yes.
Which is always a fun story. Yeah. So let's actually dive right into that. So you've been really open about that. And it can't be easy, right? To be that open about it, talking about being in the messy middle. And I would really like you to kind of talk about what did you learn about yourself and your relationship with work during that time? You give me the whole story, but I'm really curious about what those two things mean for you now.
Yeah. It's a great question, and I'm not sure I have the full answer, but I'll tell you the answer that I have up until right now. So my entire life, I've been like very career driven. Like work has been like really, really important to me, and has been my identity, right? Like whenever I go to any social setting and stuff, it's like I introduce myself with like what I do, right? It's kind of like how I've always thought about myself. And so then leaving my job and then not having that for a while was disheartening. It was like people would be like, "Oh, okay, what do you do?" I'll be like, "Nothing." Like I'm nothing in life, which is like very crazy to think about that. And then people would come and they'll be like, "Okay, you're not working." Then after a while, I realized I could say like, "I'm not working," which is like fine. And then people were like, "Oh, great. Are you going to go back to work?" I'm like, "Yes." And they're like, "What do you want to do?" And I was like, "I don't know."
Ooh.
So that was like very interesting to just be in this moment where you're like, I left my job, I don't have a job, and I don't know what I want to do next. And that was like, it took a lot for me to just come to terms with that. And in my post, actually, I talked about that, how like that was just so difficult to just have this discover this new identity or this other part of me. Um, I'm also a mother of two young children, so I'm not
Okay.
just a person who works. I'm also a mom.
I mean, it's okay either way. Yeah, I
It's
get it.
and so anyway, so it's just like a very interesting thing of like thinking about that. And I think this break has been really interesting for me to think about. Sometimes you just keep going in life and you don't realize that like what you're doing. Are you doing because you have to? Are you doing out of love? And one of the great things about this break and stopping work is I actually really love working. Even if I
Mm.
don't have to, or even if I'm not doing, I really like what I do. So that was a great learning for me to just know that like I don't work just because I have to, because I obviously do. I need to pay bills like everyone else.
Right. Yeah.
But it's because I want to. And then that was like a very good realization. And then the question became, okay, I do really like to work. Then what is the work that I'm most excited about doing? And then figuring that out. And for me, the process was a lot about elimination, to be honest. A lot of people are like, oh, you've been for so long in like marketing leadership roles. Why don't you go fractional? And then I talked to a bunch of people doing fractional to explore that path. And I was like, is that what I want to do? And then people were like, do you want to just like advise companies? And I was like, no. So it was a very interesting process to kind of like go through this, and I feel very lucky that I had the time to go through it.
It's such a gift, though.
Yes.
That time. It is. It really is a gift. When I went through it, at the time, I didn't view it as a gift, but,
I know.
yeah, right? It's a thing, right, that you
Yeah.
have to work through, and
Yeah.
you're not having well, maybe I mean, for me, it was an identity crisis probably at the
Yes.
same time, but, and just giving yourself the time and the space to work through all of that when really, I mean, if I think we're very much alike in this way is that you just kind of push through your entire career, right? There was
Yeah.
always something else to grow and to
Yes.
go to.
Yes.
And by the time you got there, you're like, oh, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Is this really it?
Yeah.
And so it is a gift to take a second, if you have the ability to do it, to
Yes.
just think through. And I now know why they call it a midlife crisis, although I think some people are having them earlier and earlier.
Yeah.
It's just, is this really where I want to be? And it
Yeah.
makes complete sense to me now.
Yeah. I know. I
Yeah.
agree 100%.
Well, so when you work, when you are involved, when you're in a team, right? I spent quite a bit of time digging into your philosophies and really what you put out there, right, on social media.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with building high performing teams. And at fast startups or fast companies, big companies like GoDaddy, for example,
Yeah.
I know you're one of 4 revenue groups there, but just big companies or companies that are trying to hit big goals. Let's put it
Yeah.
that way. Companies trying to hit big goals. And you're growing this team that really is at the forefront of that goal and where you need to be. So, can you talk to me a little bit about that? And the reason why I'm asking is because Scale Without Chaos framework, we talk all the time about people, processes, and systems and how those 3 things, every business problem in the world fits into one of those 3 buckets,
Yes.
and every one of those things needs to be in alignment in order for you to grow and scale.
Yeah.
So, coming back around to the question, is how did you build such fast, high performing teams? That's a lot, and not easy to do. So I love to always ask about that when I have the opportunity
So
to.
my quick answer for you is going to be people, processes, and systems, but I'll expand on that.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so like I love going fast. It's just like in my nature. And if I'm not going fast, I get really frustrated and like
Mm,
I can't do it. However, going fast and killing your team are two different things, right? And the
yes.
other thing that I like about the name of the podcast, and one of the reasons why I said yes, it was because I am very good at organizing the chaos. I think like
Ah,
with speed, a lot that comes is like chaos. And
mhm.
the thing that I really love doing is like when you want to get to this speed, you have a business goal or you have something that you want to achieve really fast. There is the chaotic way of doing it that is just like you have a bunch of people working on many things and you don't know what anyone is doing and you just have a lot of double work and you confuse that chaos with progress, right?
Yes,
I don't do
100%. Yes.
that. I don't do that. So one of the things that I really like to do is put like a really solid people, processes, and systems foundation so you
Mhm.
can go really fast. And then I do that as fast as I can because you cannot spend years building that foundation. And
No.
you kind of like you're building the plane as you go, right? You have to deliver.
Okay.
You can't come to your CEO or to your boss and say like, "Hey, it's going to take me 12 months to build my people, processes, and systems before I can ship anything fast." You can't do it.
Can you
You have
imagine?
to deliver and do the things at the same time. So let's just talk
Mhm.
a little bit about that. So I think that the most important of all the three is people, right? Is hiring the right people, is hiring people that want to work fast, that want to have autonomy, that want to like, that will know that they will make mistakes, but they will be kind of like so tough on themselves that like you're never going to have to like go and tell them, hey, you made a mistake, you didn't realize. They will just learn, they will just know, and they will be like,
Yeah.
yes, this happened. It was, we thought this was going to happen. It didn't, or it was a mistake or something. We learned this is what we're doing moving forward. So when you
Mhm.
hire people like that, and that is honestly, it can happen at any age and it can happen in any function. It does not matter if you're in marketing, junior, senior, it does not matter. It's just the
Mhm.
type of person that you hire. Then I think it's like more than half of the battle, in my opinion, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
completely agree. And I love that in your answer, you actually defined the right people that you have in those seats, like autonomous,
Yeah.
that can tell you when they're going to make mistakes. Like
Yeah.
you already know who your people are just by
Right.
who you work with really
Yeah.
well, right? So
Yeah.
that's key. I think having the understanding of who your right people are that work well with you, that's gold when it comes to moving and creating a quick foundation. So
Yeah.
let's talk about the cracks
Yes.
because there's going to be cracks, especially when you're flying the airplane and you're
Yeah.
building it at the same time. So let's talk about how you fix those, or how do you identify, how do you fix? What are some of your philosophies on that?
Yeah. So I think that like one of the things that I always tell my teams is we will make mistakes, especially because we're going very fast, and that's okay. As long as like, because we're going fast, we're testing and we're learning so much faster, then the rate of learning is just gonna basically outpace and outweigh the some of the mistakes we're gonna make along the way. And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
having that expectation, I think one of the things that I often try to create with my teams is just this culture of trust. One of the values that I put, and I had this very clearly on my team with Glide, is it was we win together, we learn together. What that means is
Mhm.
like when we
Mm.
do something great, we all did it. It's not like one person did it, another person did it. And when we make a mistake or we test something and it fails, we're also learning together. And so we're all learning from that. And so I think that's super important because the culture, cracks and mistakes and problems are very different in my opinion.
Mhm.
Because I believe in creating a culture of like people, it's okay for people to make mistakes. Because when
Yes.
people get like really, really tough on themselves and they are so afraid that their boss is not going to like their copy, the CEO is not going to like the social media post, they start like overthinking everything they do. And then
Mhm.
the opposite happens. They start going slower and their work starts getting worse because they just
Mhm.
don't feel like autonomy and they don't feel like they have ownership. And that's when I actually think that that to me is the true crack. Is actually when your people, they're not working to their fullest potential. They're actually
Mm.
just pretending and kind of like trying to fit into what some other people want. And so that tends to be the cracks that I'm really worried about is like if my
Mhm.
team is my team not operating at their best versus like, oh, we made a mistake. Like we all make mistakes. That's totally fine.
They almost lose or dull their edge
Yeah.
is how I put it,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
think that's it because what makes when you're moving this fast, your edge is what makes you good. That
Exactly.
absolutely. Your edge is what makes you good. And as soon as you start to play it safe,
Yes.
it goes away. And it's funny, a lot of people are going to call me out. I know already I can picture in my mind who's going to call me out for this because I typically would be advocating on the, well, think it all the way through before you start moving. And I think what we're saying though, you moving fast and building these things and testing, and me saying, well, think it through. It's really two sides of this. It's the same
Yeah.
thing. It's
Yeah.
just the speed at which you're working and your velocity. And
Yeah.
if your team is built to sustain that, then they're built to sustain it. And that's how they like
Yes.
to work too.
Yeah.
I love that. So, thinking back to some of your roles that you've had previously, is there anything that you would do differently in terms of building that high stakes, high revenue, high performing team?
Um, I think I wrote not recently, but a while ago, I wrote about the mistakes that I've made when I started as a VP of marketing at Glide. I write about
Oh,
everything that I do, especially the mistakes. I think they're helpful for other people to read. Um,
more
and
helpful. Agree.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then one thing that I found really interesting is my time at Glide. I actually, when I started, I said, let me try to operate with the team that I inherited and let me try to do things, but very quickly, based on the goals that we had from a growth perspective and from I was kind of like basically pushing recruiting to like, oh, I'll do this one day. Oh my God, I don't have time for recruiting. And a lot of people probably that are hearing this, they're like, I don't have time for recruiting. And so this is where you have to come to yourself. I was going to say come to Jesus, but like you come to yourself or ChatGPT and you say, what is the most important thing that I can do? And what is the thing that
Yeah.
only I can do as the leader of this team?
There you
And
go.
what I found is recruiting often comes to me and only I can do that. And
Mm,
so to answer your question is what would I do to keep going faster and faster? I think it's like the first thing that I would do coming in any new role is what are the goals that I want to achieve? Do I have a clear picture of the team that I need to start hiring for? And then I would start
mhm.
doing that right away. Because the longer you postpone that, the longer it's going to take for you to get your great people. And then the longer it takes for you to actually start getting really great stuff done. Um, so yeah, that's my biggest thing.
The amount of energy that you have just in the passion of you talking about this is phenomenal.
Thank you. I have a lot of energy. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
No coffee.
sorry, say that again.
No coffee.
No coffee. I could use some coffee, I think, right now as
Yeah.
well. Yeah, I could use some coffee. But it's phenomenal. It's catching as well. You're like, this is how we do it. This is
No.
how we build systems. This is what we
Yeah.
do. I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
So one more question before we kind of tie it back around, and this is more on the identity front. So kind of shifting back a little bit, I guess. So in your opinion, because I think you have a really good take on experience here, how can leaders shift from identity equals output to identity equals impact?
Oh my gosh, that's such a as someone who kind of like likes to be busy and have, I have amazing, whether it's like a post-it that I cross or like a project management tool that I click done, like I have a lot of excitement on that. I learned the hard way that,
Mm,
output does not equal results, right? And one of the things that I created throughout my career is like this discipline. Pretty much every day, but certainly every week, absolutely every month, and absolutely every quarter. This thing of like, am I working on the right things? Like, if I was starting
mm,
like today,
mhm.
today, are the projects that I have coming up for this next week, this next month, this next quarter, would these be the things that I would be doing?
Yeah, I
Um,
love that.
and now, to be honest, with AI, because I have all of my little folders and all that kind of stuff, I have my prompts ready. It kind of like much easier for me to do this. Before it was like me and like writing it down. Now it's
Mhm.
like much faster. But having this constant reset really helps me like stay focused on the impact. Because
Mhm.
what I've seen a lot in like my teams and companies, et cetera, is like sometimes you're working towards something and you're like, gosh, but it's not making a dent. And somehow you just keep pushing just because you said you were going to do it. And there's
Mhm.
no one forcing you to do that. It's just like it is in your
Yeah.
control to actually stop, pause, and maybe do something else, or just pause that altogether until you figure out what else you're going to do. And so
Mhm.
that's one of the things that I highly recommend people doing is having this somewhat of like a constant, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever works for you, right? It's like, am I working on the things that are moving the needle? And what I found after I
Yeah.
started doing this exercise is you without any external advisor, because oftentimes we're like, oh, only if I had an advisor that is more experienced than me, they would tell me what's wrong. And what I found in my experience is like, we know we're just not taking the time to ask ourselves the question. And so
Mhm.
that's what I really advise my advice to people to think about, output versus impact is, better than anyone what is output and what is it. And if you
Mhm.
feel it's off, it is off.
Mhm. I find too, so one everything that you said was perfect. I mean, in terms of my opinion, I agree. But I find as well, it's so funny. We get really, really attached to those activities,
Yes.
really attached,
Yes.
and almost to the point where people have to pry us away from them.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for it other than the fact that you just really like that activity. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but it's just I remember very specifically sitting in a one-on-one session with my mentor at the time and them arguing with me. I was arguing back saying, "But I really like that, but it's not doing anything, Sam. There's no
Yes.
reason for you to be doing that, but I would not let it go."
Yeah.
And why? I couldn't tell you today. If it felt good maybe to do
Yeah.
something like routine every day.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But we really hold on to those things.
Absolutely. I'll give you just one example that is so real. So what I try to do right now, because I'm exploring a business idea on my own. So it's just me and ChatGPT and Claude.
Yeah.
And when I don't
Yeah.
know what ChatGPT tells me, I go to Claude, and then I ask Claude, what do you think? So I do
I love
every
it.
morning, what are my daily goals? And at the end of the day, I say, this is what I did. And then we align on what I'm going to do the next day. So between
Mm.
yesterday at the end of the day and this morning, I was like, yeah, that doesn't matter anymore. Something new matters today. So like, I don't have a team. I don't have a boss. This is me with myself
Mhm.
and just say, okay, what I thought was important last night, now that I slept overnight and in this next step of what I need to do, these are not the most important things. So I'm going to do something else. And so
Yeah.
it's funny how we just don't give ourselves that permission.
No, no. It's almost like a mini sign of failure, but it's not. But it's maybe it has something to do. We attach ourselves to it very quickly. This
Yes,
thing that we're doing and our output and all of that
absolutely.
stuff. And so it's funny when that comes back and you're like, no, that doesn't matter. You don't need to do that anymore. Do something more impactful.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Well, on that note, Branca, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it. This has been such a fun conversation. So, like, just full of a whole bunch of really great advice. I am going to start using ChatGPT to do exactly that. And I use ChatGPT for everything, but I've not used ChatGPT for a daily review in terms of or a monthly review in terms of what's important. Am I doing the right things? I don't know if I'll like its answer, but I will try it out.
Yes.
Awesome.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, of course. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Thank you for tuning in to Scale Without Chaos. If today's episode sparked new ideas or gave you a fresh perspective, do me a favor. Hit that follow button, subscribe for new episodes, and share this with someone who's going through what we talked about today. This podcast is all about visionary leadership, sustainable business growth, and the systems that make scale possible. For more content, free resources, and behind-the-scenes insights, connect with me on LinkedIn, follow along on Instagram at Scale Without Chaos, and subscribe to the newsletter. Until next time, keep building.